Tell us a little bit about what you saw and being able to relay that message to Cora when you watched Kimbrel pitch and kind of help out so he wasn't tipping his pitches.
So tipping pitches, we hear about it all the time.
People at home understand what tipping pitches is all about.
It's amazing.
And that's remarkable.
Alex, I believe I unintentionally started one of the more heated debates in the tipping pitches Slack history. Did you see this? Were you following this?
I was not following this. Can you clue me in?
This is like when Trotsky and Lenin split. That's what this felt like.
Okay.
In the episode discussion channel of the Tipping Pitches Slack, which you can get access to by signing up for any level of our Patreon. This is not just a plug. This is just how I wanted to start this episode. We had the great jeans versus sweatpants debate of early 2025. I believe this happened on the Patreon, right? Where I shared that I'm no longer wearing any joggers, nothing with an elastic waist, nothing with an elastic band that goes around my ankle. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm Gen Z pilled in this one singular way.
Yes, I recall that. And I think I diverged from you slightly. I like a little taper in my sweatpants, but that's okay. Different strokes. Different strokes
For different folks, and those different folks were all being represented in the Tipping Pitches Slack channel, where people were getting into heated debates and asking questions such as, who are you trying to impress? Why don't your jeans fit well? All of these different things, because I shared, I'll just wear jeans when I'm sitting around at home. Guess what I'm wearing right now? Jeans.
I gotta say, that's a little insane.
Why is that insane? Can you explain to me why that's insane? I said I would wear jeans when I'm traveling on an airplane. On a red eye, I'm wearing jeans, bro. I'm outside in the world. Like right now, I'm working. This is work. I'm at work. I'm wearing jeans.
You said business up top, business down below.
Exactly. It gets me in the headspace. I'm not even kidding.
As soon as I get home from like being out, being at work, whatever, first thing I do, take off my pants. Do pants replace them? Maybe. Sometimes they're shorts. Sometimes it's some sweatpants. Sometimes there's nothing at all. But I got to get out of the jeans. And it's not even like an outside clothes thing, although that plays a role in it as well, right? Mm-hmm. I like being able to if I want to go lie in bed.
Well, I don't lie in bed. I don't lie in bed with jeans on. That is where I draw the line, and it's mostly for germs. Right. I don't like outside clothes underneath the blanket of my bed. That is the line. But also, I have a dog. She jumps on the bed. I mean, it's not like I'm sanitizing her paws 3 times a day. We can only do so much here.
If you dig too deep into the outside clothes thing,
it falls apart.
It falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have inside shoes, though. I have a pair of slippers, hard bottom slippers that I only wear inside. I never wear them outside my apartment. And I don't wear my regular shoes around my apartment either.
Yeah.
It's just... There is no logic to this madness. This is just the web of opinions and preferences that I've developed over the course of my 28 years of life.
What? So jeans, you have found, are the most comfortable thing for you to wear.
I never said that. And I honestly am confounded as to how you even got to that conclusion. I just said, sometimes I'll wear them when I'm lounging around. I'm not so bothered by the feel of my jeans that if I come home, I need to immediately get them off. Like I'm wearing a fucking tuxedo.
I just think it's nice to let loose a little bit. It's like the day is over.
I'm let loose in my jeans.
All right.
I'm letting loose.
More power to you.
I'm letting loose. I'm like Brett Favre in those Wrangler commercials.
Jeans on a flight is a little hard for me. If it's like an hour flight, whatever. But like if I'm going to visit my family in California,
when are you taking an hour flight?
Well, like a flight to Chicago's
Pittsburgh?
Like an hour and a half or whatever. Like,
is that true? That's so short.
It is very short.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Technology these days.
Is that technology? I don't know.
Yeah,
yes, technically.
Aviation technology. It's been in the news recently. Not sure if you've been following. So when you fly cross country, you're like, I can't wear jeans.
Correct.
I just don't agree. When I'm out in the world, I'm surrounded by strangers. It's not like I'm trying to fake myself into thinking I'm at home on my couch by wearing sweatpants. And this is the thing. I don't judge anybody who wears sweatpants, but I gotta be honest, I'm feeling a little bit judged for wearing jeans. I'm not like one of those people who's like, respect yourself too much to wear sweatpants out in public. I don't care. Come on.
Yeah. respect myself.
Several years in college, I wore nothing but sweatpants to class. Like, and this is NYU kids are wearing like suits to class. It's absurd. Frankly.
Yes.
It's absurd how people dress at New York University.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of the many things that I feel shame about from my alma mater. I don't know. I like wearing jeans.
Hey, Bobby,
Jeans fit me well.
I will hold space for that.
Thank you.
You are seen. You are valid. We here for you. Okay.
Okay. And then after this great jeans and sweatpants debate happened, then friend of the show, Ben Lindbergh, shared a tweet with us of a candid photo of Alex Rodriguez at a gym on the squat rack, using the squat rack. And you know what he was wearing? God, I wish he was wearing jeans, but he wasn't. He was wearing, frankly, the baggiest sweatpants I've ever seen a man wear.
Insane.
The waist of the sweatpants was like halfway down his thigh. I just don't, it's crazy.
That man's cooking on levels we haven't even discovered yet.
Sweatpants to the gym is kind of a vet move. Not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those cover the gains up moves.
Right.
No, you're not there to show off to other people. You're there to put in the work.
That would just make me hot. It would just make me uncomfortable.
That's the point.
Okay.
Grind. You don't know shit
It's
about
not
the
supposed to be
grind.
comfortable.
Right. Discomfort is pain is weakness leaving the
ever
body.
heard the phrase no pain, no gain, Bobby?
Exactly. I wish that A-Rod would put out, like, this would be really good for us. If A-Rod put out like a sort of P90X style DVD set of his workouts, because then we could put you through it.
Yes.
For video content.
I would do it for
Patreon.com
research purposes.
/Tippy Pitch. You won't do yoga with me.
No.
But she'll do Alex Rodriguez's 90 Days of Fitness.
In a heartbeat. I just got done editing a fan cam for him, so I got to figure out when to drop it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What was the impetus for that?
I was listening to Charlie XCX and was like, you know what would go well with this?
Which song?
Von Dutch.
I don't know that one.
That's fun.
What about the one with her and Lord, and you can make a fan cam of him and Jeter?
It's okay. I'm gonna make a fan cam for every song on Brat to Alex Rodriguez. This is back-to-back episodes of Charlie XCX discussion. Wow, Taylor Swift over era.
I can't remember if the Charlie XCX discussion happened here or on the Patreon.
It was on the Patreon.
Okay, I can't keep track of these things anymore. The Taylor Swift discussion is over. Yes, I told you this. I'm out. We're on a break. Ross from Friends. We're on a break.
Big Friends guy.
I was in high school. You know what I'm not? I'm not a big Seinfeld guy. Never watched it. Never will. Jerry Seinfeld, too close to home. Like, I can't escape this man. He's always at Citi Field.
He's everywhere.
You turn around, there's Jerry Seinfeld. Please, God. I look forward to seeing your fan cam. Where are you going to post that?
It's a great question. I was going to post it on TikTok, but
just posted the fan cam straight to Instagram Reels.
Yeah, that's what you say. Hey, speaking of TikTok,
great song.
Yes, great song. Shout out Kesha.
We should replace all the Taylor Swift talk with Kesha talk.
Ooh,
discography not quite as far-reaching, but holds up.
Does hold up. Absolutely. I know you saw this because you tweeted about it. Can we take a second to talk about Bryce Harper real quick?
Dude. Yeah, we could take more than a second because we're right now. What we're
the
doing
whole episode
here is you and I are killing time until we have the guest this week on. Noah Kulwin from Pullback will be on, and I promise you, we will get all of the dumb shit out of the way before he comes on. We'll let him drive the car towards the dumb shit. I don't want to be talking about Bryce Harper's lattes, and Noah's like, "What the fuck are you guys saying?"
This man can't be stopped. He's a content king. Have you
He
seen
looks unwell.
He looks incredibly unwell. And I know he has an 8-month-old child, a newborn. Does that still count as a newborn? 8 months?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't pretend like I know more than I do.
That's good. That's on accountability.
Right, exactly. I'm willing to admit when I don't know what I don't know.
He looks supremely unwell. It's what we're talking about is you can go to our Twitter feed, our X the Everything app, blaze your glory. That's x.com/tipping_pitches to see the video in question of Bryce Harper.
URL.
It's so bad.
I saw someone say the other day that still typing Twitter into the search bar is an act of protest.
Exactly.
And I was like, wow, I guess I'm a protester.
I want them using that computing power on all my redirects. He made a TikTok about his go-to, I guess, iced latte recipe, right? And he goes through the whole grinding of the beans and the pulling of the shots. And I know you, as a coffee connoisseur, had a lot of thoughts about his technique.
If this podcast ever totally tanks, and this is a little bit tougher now that they're getting rid of, and they're knifing TikTok in the back. But my plan was to just become like a barista bro. You know, to launch a page called the Barista Bro, and it would just be me making coffee every single day and sharing one thought.
Right,
that'd be the whole thing. That shit would go viral. It would work. Honestly.
It would. You and Black Rifle Coffee, right?
Like
it's
today,
like holding it down.
Collab. Today, my thought would be about jeans.
Yeah,
that shit would go viral, dude. No, Bryce. He's okay. Look, far be it for me to begrudge anybody who's like trying to get into the coffee game, but you have to know you're Bryce Harper, world famous athlete. Maybe just a United States famous athlete because baseball doesn't reach as far and wide anymore. There's other athletes in this game, you know? We've heard tell that Francisco Lindor is a coffee head. We know Jimmy Butler is out here, big face coffee. He knows his shit. There's videos of him weighing the grounds. There's videos of him using an auto tamper. There's videos of him talking to his employees as they're making lattes. So when Bryce Harper comes in here with that weak shit, where he's pulling a shot straight into the milk frothing cup, he couldn't even see the shot. You can't see the quality of the shot as he's pulling it.
Yeah.
His tamp was weak, way too much syrup, whatever, it's fine. People like their coffee sweet. I understand. My dad drinks dessert in a cup every single morning and every single night. It's fine. Different strokes for different folks. But then he's talking about raw milk. He's drinking raw milk lattes in the off season.
Yeah.
I'm just going to confirm this for you now. This is a suggestion of friend of the pod, McKenna. That will be on the 2025 bingo card. His player goes on the IL because of raw milk. It doesn't have to be Bryce, but it's going to be someone.
Well, so my favorite part of that moment in the video, because the whole thing is an epic, really. It's
2.5 minute video.
It is a text comparable.
Bro, he froths the espresso.
I know,
with syrup, but not the milk, because he's making an iced latte. But he feels like I like the flavor better when I froth the espresso. My God.
But he says halfway through the video, as you mentioned, right? He's like, me and my family, we love raw milk. That in and of itself, you could talk about. And then
Child
what he says,
Protective Services. Yeah. Child Protective Services.
Right. The dark circles under his eyes really come into focus. And then he's like, when I can't use that,
he has wasting disease.
When I can't use that, I use this other milk, which I don't even remember what it was called.
It's just like I don't know, something Valley organic.
Yeah. You want to know what it is?
Milk
is ultra pasteurized milk.
I know.
So, can you explain this to me?
I will.
He's like, when I can't get the raw milk, I usually go for the other end of the spectrum.
Well, there's no other option, right? There's no other option. It's either ultra pasteurized or raw. That's what you can get in America. You can either get ultra pasteurized milk, the milk that you should drink that is safe, or you can get raw milk, the milk that is sold to people who are dumb enough to buy it by farmers who are not protecting the people who are consuming it. So, yes, my explanation for that is that he probably has a dairy guy.
Right.
And when he has enough milk to sell to Bryce Harper and his Mormon family, or former Mormon family, because he's making lattes.
He's making coffee.
TikTok.
He's drinking coffee.
Yes, so he's not Mormon anymore. He's post-Mormon.
Although depending on who you ask, iced coffee is a bit of a gray area when it comes to Mormonism. At least what I
don't think that's true.
Only one of us has watched The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, so
that's definitely true. Okay, but I have a friend who grew up in a Mormon family, and she went to a Mormon university because her family made her go there, and she eventually transferred out after 1 year because she was disciplined for drinking a coffee while studying off campus.
A hot coffee or an iced coffee?
I don't know. Likely hot because it was in Utah, so it's probably pretty cold.
Because this is what the words.
But even
of wisdom,
still, someone snitched on her off campus, bro.
That's crazy.
It's crazy what's going on in this country.
The words, I don't know. It's called words of wisdom. I don't know. I tried to see, I was looking up before that, because we do research for this podcast. I was like, well, what does the Mormon church, what does the Church of Latter-day Saints have to say about drinking iced coffee? Is Bryce Harper in violation? And from what I can tell, they discourage hot drinks. right? And they discourage, which refers to coffee and tea. Caffeine is discouraged.
Right, that's why I thought it was. I didn't know it had anything to do with temperature.
No, it's actually caffeine is nowhere in.
I thought it was that you can't do drugs and caffeine is a drug. At least that follows a certain logic.
Right, it does follow a certain logic. No, so this comes from like the 1800s because that's how long this religion's been around, like 100, about as long as baseball. And they were like
have been around longer than this religion.
They're like hot drinks. They're bad for you. Don't drink them.
Was that because like the devil isn't present in them?
Your guess is as good as mine. I haven't watched the next season yet.
I'm an iced coffee drinker.
You are.
I would say 3/4 of days it's an iced latte for me in the morning, and that's it.
What are you doing these days? Where the wind chill's getting us down to like single digits.
It's not like I'm leaving my apartment very often while I'm drinking this, so still drinking.
Okay.
The iced latte. Although recently I've been going for well, nobody cares about this. Nobody cares what coffee I drink in the morning. Let's actually stop there. I do like to make a little flat white. You know,
Ooh.
Less milk.
Yeah.
Better flavor ratio.
That's the way to do it. The Australians know what's up.
The Australians are deep in the coffee game. They're real. They know what's up. Okay. Any other coffee thoughts? Bryce, I'd like him to keep trying.
Yeah. He did.
Then again, his
an hour ago,
thing,
he posted a new
video,
one.
A new latte video?
Yeah. He makes his own like caramel sauce. Once again, Bryce, you picked the wrong time to become a TikTok influencer.
I know.
My guy.
Seriously, he's going to have to pivot over to Mark Zuckerberg's Meta.
God.
I would pay American dollars to watch Bryce Harper on Joe Rogan. Speaking of Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. What's going on with him? Can you explain to me what's going on with his whole vibe?
Which him? Harper, Zuck, or Rogan?
I feel like I deeply understand Harper and Rogan. So please explain Mark Zuckerberg to me, bro. What's with the like cross on a chain around his neck? Why does he look like
Logan Paul?
I don't know. Yeah. I guess Logan Paul. I was
That's
trying to think of a younger person.
No, I know. He looks like he's from like a hype house or something like that.
Yeah, but then I tried to think of the name of a man and one single name of one single man in one single hype house, and nothing came to my mind. It was just like a monkey crashing a cymbal.
Noah Beck. There's another one.
I'm gonna take your word for it.
This is what happens when you have a Gen Z sister-in-law.
That's fair. Yeah, I used to think of you as somewhat of a Zuck scholar. You know, back in the Sweet Baby Ray's days.
Yeah.
And he's flown the coop.
I know. He's making it hard for us Zuckheads as of late, honestly. It's getting hard to stand behind him.
My canon Zuckerberg is Jesse Eisenberg from The Social Network.
Of course.
I listened to Eisenberg on Mark Maron's pod, which is the most me sentence ever. Let's go. I listened to Eisenberg's appearance. First of all, it was awesome. He talks about depression and suicidal tendencies in his youth, which I was like, this is incredibly real. Awesome interview. But then he said something in that interview, which honestly made me really sad, which was that he said he never watches any of his performances because he can't. Because he just can't watch it without thinking about, oh, I should have done this way, or, oh, I don't like how I look here, or how I said this here. And so then he followed up and it said, I've never seen The Social Network. He said, I had to sit through it for one premiere, but I walked out of it part of the way through.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's one of the greatest movies ever. He can't even watch it. Made me sad.
Yeah. Some say it's the reason I don't listen to Tipping Pitches. Me and Jesse.
Last week we were Jaws. This week we're The Social Network. You heard it here first. Okay, well, we have a fun conversation coming up with Blowback co-host Noah Kulwin, where we will span a great number of topics, including the Department of Defense and the New York Mets and various other things that ruin people's lives. We're also going to do a couple sessions of fan therapy, one for the Seattle Mariners, one for the Tampa Bay Rays. But before we do, I am Bobby Wagner.
I am Alex Baisley.
And you are listening to Tipping Pitches. Okay, we are delighted to be joined by Noah Kulwin, co-host, co-creator, co-everything of Blowback, a podcast. Not sure if you all have heard of it. Season 5 out now. Please subscribe. Season 5 about Cambodia and Vietnam. Noah, hello. Welcome to Tipping Pitches, a podcast that puts a lot less effort into each individual episodes of their show. How are you?
I'm good, man. Although you shouldn't sell yourself short because I didn't really get Alex Rodriguez's deal before I listened to it, and that required like one of you guys is vaporizing your brains. So you know, I wouldn't sell yourself short. No. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is what we do for our listeners. This is what we do for the fans, right? Someone has to do the academic, scholarly work. Otherwise, no one else will, frankly.
Someone spent their whole academic career translating the Rosetta Stone. Like, they didn't do any of those fun things that they could have done in their life, but then they cracked the Rosetta Stone, and that's what you did, Alex.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's like
Alex Rodriguez.
I think it also helps that, you know, because you're studying a man of so many great talents and such vast success, that if you yourself want to, become successful in what you do, you are in effect studying the blueprint for your own personal greatness.
Exactly.
Think on that. Think on that.
Have you applied to be his personal assistant yet, Alex?
Not yet. I'm still looking for that in. So if you know or any of our listeners have the direct line to A-Rod, I'm listening. I DM him every so often on Instagram. I think he posted something with Bob Dylan song playing in the background, and so I said, A-Rod, thoughts on The Complete Unknown. Have not gotten a response yet, but I'm waiting with bated breath.
You haven't even seen A Complete Unknown yet, though.
I know.
I have an A-Rod story.
Well, now this is the place
for it.
Seriously.
Well, so it's one of those things though where I didn't really remember that I had an A-Rod story until I was like halfway through your episode, and then all of a sudden, you know, like Terminator stare, like, like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? And I remembered, so I don't know, how old are you guys?
28.
Okay, cool. So you're more or less my age, but you were not yet in the workforce when The Force Awakens came out. And when that happened, like, there was, at my job, it was like a big, because I worked at Recode then. I was a reporter in Silicon Valley. And, it was like a major like work event. Like, you know, I didn't cover the fucking movies. That wasn't my job. But all of like the venture capital firms and a lot of the tech companies that I covered, like the same way that they did, like when I worked at Vice, they scheduled like company screenings for Black Panther.
Yeah.
And they had tickets on offer because those were the times.
Right. They're like, we don't have to have a DEI initiative that actually does anything, but we can see Black Panther.
We literally, I mean, it was kind of impressively cynical. And so The Force Awakens, however, Star Wars getting the J.J. Abrams reboot, they were going to put the sizzle back in it. Like the commercials for that movie coming out were like considered like a big deal and were a hyped event. Like there were articles written of like, what time is the Toyota flavored ad for The Force Awakens after this football game coming out, like kind of stuff. And so I think it was Excel Partners, the venture capital firm, organized a screening, and I do not remember how. I think it may have been through my boss at the time or somebody else, but I got a ticket to go to their like the room, like the theater that they had rented out to watch The Force Awakens on the day it was coming out, or like the weekend it was coming out, at the Metreon Theater in downtown San Francisco. How cool is that? So I went with like a reporter I knew. Because you know this is how the crooked media becomes crooked. They bribe you with things like want to come see a movie.
Oh, I'm there. I'm there.
And we got there, and I'm like sitting in my row, and the guy next to me, Rolf, he works at the Wall Street Journal. He was like, "That's Alex Rodriguez." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, just down there." And it was like, "Holy shit, that is Alex Rodriguez." What the fuck? Because Alex Rodriguez stands out in a room full of fucking Patagonia fleeces and Silicon Valley dorks, and you're like, "What the fuck is Alex Rodriguez doing here?" And at that time, he was dating the 23andMe lady. It was that phase of his career and life. Anne Wojcicki, ex of Sergey Brin. So because he was always about hustling and grinding, he sought that in his partner, which is why he dated a woman for a while who now runs a company mostly known for being bankrupt and getting people arrested.
Which is why
But
he
yeah.
maybe tried to buy the New York Mets, a franchise mostly known for being bankrupt and getting people arrested.
Well, that's what the killer business instinct is. Everybody else sees a flaming carcass with like roaches coming out of it, and it's like on an ancient burial ground, and you say, I need that. Everybody else says, I don't need that.
Right.
Everybody else says that looks like a Stephen King novel. And you're like, no.
That's opportunity speaking.
Exactly. Alex gets it. He knows.
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to talk me through the A-Rod movie watching experience. Like, did he sit through the whole thing? Was he fidgety?
Yeah.
Did he eat popcorn?
Look, man.
Did he get up and leave halfway through?
Dog,
when he realized it was a beat-for-beat remake of the original Star Wars that wasn't very creative or good?
Exactly. See, this is the thing, man. It's like I was watching it, and like this is, I was not like a red letter media watcher. I didn't go to cinema studies. I was just Joe Schmo, like 21-year-old, 22-year-old in the theater, in sitting there being like, this is just A New Hope. They just remade. Like they were like, well, here's how we can't fuck this up.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, was an opinion that in those days got a lot of people mad at you because you were like, why are you saying that like my filet mignon is a turd sandwich? Like that kind of shit. And no, Alex Rodriguez, he looked like he was having a fucking blast. I mean, I thought it was just really funny that who is the last person I would have expected to see at a fucking screening of Star Wars with people who, like with Silicon Valley people, like it was like, oh yeah, like the fucking like one of the best offensive players in the history of baseball. Interesting. How very interesting.
He's a legend, honestly. He's very good at pretending to like going through the motions of being a person.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's
found.
like one of the more normal people things I can imagine him doing is sitting down to watch a Star Wars movie. I suppose when you situate it in the context of he was there with the CEO of 23andMe and a bunch of other Silicon Valley people, it makes a little more sense based on what we know about A-Rod.
But also, it's like it makes perfect sense to me on the level of like that's the thing about like movies and TV. You just have to sit there.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
It just plays in front of you. Like, so yeah, Alex Rodriguez, who like infamously struggles with what we would call personhood, things like having a personality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that's not an issue when you're just watching Star Wars.
Absolute legend. Noah, you are a Mets fan. What
Yes.
can you talk a bit about like your relationship to the Mets? I mean, what does your relationship with baseball look like these days?
Yeah, so I was a Mets fan growing up, pretty serious. Went to probably like half a dozen games at Shea as a kid. I have I have a couple like pieces of Shea memorabilia that I'm very bad at holding on to things. I lose shit all the time. But I've held on to some like old Mets memorabilia. And then I watched kind of off and on after high school. Like I paid like the World Series run. I definitely paid attention to, but in the Bay Area, I mainly cared about the A's because that was just a fun fan going experience.
That's right, brother.
And like when you live in the East Bay, because I went to UC Berkeley, and when you live in the East Bay, it's like, at least in those days, I mean, obviously not anymore, rest in fucking peace. But what always struck me was how the way that everybody talks about like, oh, going to a minor league game and like the best and most fun and like intimate and affordable ways, like that existed with like a major league team that like honestly, even given its like budget status, was like played better than that position for many years. Like they had I think they had a wild card appearance one year when I was an undergrad, at least one. And yeah, and I just have very fond memories of that. But then just this last season, a friend got me to go with him to Citi Field, and it was like reactivating a dormant gene, or whatever I'm sure that's biologically illogical, but it definitely seeing I think a McNeil walk off was like, oh wow. Like this is the Grimace thing is real. Like this is special. Right. And what I found getting my feet back into it was that a lot of things that had made being a fan difficult for me, which are like game length and because like just reasons why I was drawn to like the NBA more as a fan. Just if I didn't feel like I had to I just felt totally lost in the consumption. Nowadays it's like, oh no, they fixed that. Like the pitch clock is actually like I can watch a game and do something. Like I can, like it's not like you know, some quality of life things that I thought are pretty real. You know, I don't quite get the math on why DHs are so problematic, but I will say that it is nice also not having to watch like Bartolo Colon at bat.
Horrible take.
You know,
Unbelievably horrible take. I can't believe it. You grew up a Mets fan, a National League fan, and you're betraying the designated hitter take? Come on.
You've picked the like 1/3 rail on this podcast. The one thing that Bobby and I can't agree on.
Yeah, Alex and I made a non-aggression pact about the DH like literally 6 years ago at this point because we would just get in devolving arguments on the podcast.
I mean, well, see, this is the thing is like I'm familiar enough that like I'm a pretty low information baseball viewer. However,
the best way to be a ball watcher.
However, I am cognizant that like there is it's not like other stuff that's decided. Like it's not like there are other things like that there are ways of determining value where you can say, yes, this one thing is more important and changes the game in this way than another thing. Like I think pitch clock is like a really hard one to argue against, even though there was obviously a lot of natural skepticism for players over the years in different places and so on. Like, but I understand, like, I think that one's kind of inarguable to me, just in terms of like how the games feel. And the sense of and so there's that, and then the other, but like with designated hitters, like I don't fucking know, like the fuck do I care? Like I just enjoy not like it feels as a low information viewer that it's like probably better to have a guy who's like I don't know, like a fucking like spare outfielder or whatever the fuck, like swinging at something, like than having like a guy whose job is to do the other thing entirely.
So in other words, you're saying Rob Manfred masterclass. He's been a great steward of this great game of ours. Everything he's done in his tenure has been just a 10 out of 10 success.
Well, look, I think history as a force, it can work through agents of change whom we are not, always meant to expect.
Right.
I think that's, I think that, we have to keep a broad mind of these things, especially when we see, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like what is like the most like egregious, because there is, I mean, like it's Major League Baseball. There's like tons of egregious shit going on at all times. Like Aroldis Chapman still playing or something.
Yeah.
No, I'm and then the other, but really it's just like it was like an OMG Mets like total bandwagon thing of like, oh yeah, this is like a great time to get in because now the Mets are, about to begin like a window of contention that is like really just starting to open kind of directionally. And, could it be like, it's a kind of a rare moment in sports. Like, could this be like, not like a dynasty, but could this be like a total 180 in like the nature of the team for like the Patriots and Tom Brady is almost how I think of it. Like the Patriots before Brady were just like, they sucked. They were a shitty franchise within the scope of the NFL. And after them, like now they are like on par with the Packers. More. They're even though it's like it was just one guy and his quarterback, like they're synonymous with like fucking like all that is good and holy. Because of what that like big era was able to accomplish. And it's, like that's the level of hype around a team now. And it's like, yeah, as like a fan who has like a credible, like lifelong attachment to it, however weak it was at different points, it's like, sign me up. That's awesome. I'm right there. Same. Yeah. And it's not dissimilar, by the way, with like where the Knicks are now after like even more years in an even worse desert.
It's one of the coolest things about sports. And I think baseball in particular, because I think baseball is particularly fun to come back to if you've been away from for a long time, whether that's whatever a long time means for you as a fan. If you take a month off because you're busy, or if you take 5 years off because you're doing other stuff, or you're going through a different life thing or whatever. There's so much unknowable about baseball that it doesn't feel like a long gap really left you that far behind, because you step right in and it's still a very simple game where a guy throws, it's hard to hit it, and you have to rely a lot on luck. And so it's so beautiful to come back to after like a decade or even less, like, because we're all just kind of crossing our fingers and hoping for the best anyway. I find like with football and basketball, I come back after I've been away for a little while and I'm like, oh my God, there's so many guys I don't know and they're really fucking important. Like if you don't know 25 out of the 32 NFL quarterbacks, you're kind of screwed.
I gotta say though, that is
it.
every sport. Baseball feels that way too.
Right. Exactly.
This is the first time I've been really engaged in like baseball, and like Mariano Rivera is not in the league. Like it's fucking
Right.
like that's just growing up, you know. Like in the NFL now, like I totally get it, like especially because of like the quarterback transition that's changed and there. But like in the NBA, for example, like it's like, oh yeah, the fucking Grizzlies are amazing. And it's like, because yes, of like that one player who made headlines for non-ball reasons last year, but like Ja Morant is a star, and there are like a bunch of other guys on that team who are like fucking crazy and scary in their own way. And like, that's the fucking Memphis Grizzlies. And they've always, granted they have a tradition of winning that goes back some years at this point, but like fucking, it's everywhere. Like the Magic are really good. Like they have a record similar to the Knicks right now. And it's like, that's like Franz Wagner. Like, did you know that there was a star named Franz Wagner? Like, it's, that quality is like, if you're not consistently engaged in a sport, like, it feels like the rate of star turnover now is such that you will always come back to it and be like, well, it turns out that like this vaunted thing sucks now. And actually a thing that was like a turd that was shitty before rules or is like viable. I mean, like the Wolves are like that. Fuck. Like I grew up with them as like basement dwellers of base, so bad that Kevin Garnett had to run away.
Yeah.
And now they're like Ant-Man ascending.
Yeah. Well, it does feel like sports are kind of in its like accelerationist era, where like the last 2 decades have just seen insane like modernization of analytics, and like every year there's a whole crop of new young stars who are just running the league. If you didn't watch baseball from like 1940 to 1950, you would be like, nothing has changed. This game is the exact same.
Yeah.
Like, and these days, you're right. It's like completely different. It's hard to like, not to mention like in sports like football and stuff, like careers last like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Which makes things even harder to.
I mean, I think with sports, like it's the LinkedInification of it from a young age, where it's like, this is my career. I must professionalize this. I must become like the exact, like, the perfect player. And so I need to get up to snuff at an earlier age. And so there's a much bigger, I think, like homogenization of how the games have been played. And it's like gotten a lot closer to whatever like the quote unquote perfect analytical form of it is. That's definitely true in basketball. I saw somebody arguing about that today on Twitter, or on X the Everything app, as we like to call it here on this podcast, about how it's funny that basketball seems to be going through what baseball just went through like 10 years ago, where everybody's mad that everybody's jacking up a bunch of threes because it's like the analytical correct thing to do. Just in the same exact way that everybody was mad that people were swinging for the fences and shifting 5 or 10 years ago in baseball. And that is just the turbulence of fandom versus whatever the perfect mathematical outcome is in sports.
I agree with that. And I would also add that, like, in this case, I don't know how the discourse went in baseball around that 10 years ago, but like with the NBA, I'm like pretty firmly in the camp that like the TV ratings shit should not, like the product quality is actually very high.
I agree.
Like there's a lot of issues. Like they need more teams. Like it's really like they need an expansion. Like the expansion's necessary for the number of stars they have. Like it's like you have a lot of people. Like it's kind of nuts. But then on top of which, they're not like they've lost like the NBA, and whether that is like the NBA like silver hive mind, or it is the NBA as like the sum total of the owners and their combined basketball industrial complex infrastructure, whatever. They just don't know how to market their product that well anymore. Like they've not been that effective, and like the corollary institutions with whom they do it, like shoe companies, Hollywood, TV, etc. Like it's for a number of different reasons that you can identify obvious similarities and patterns in elsewhere in culture industries. Like it's just not worked the same way it did before. And, in other sports, this is like they've gotten around this to some extent, or like the product changed. But in general, I just don't feel like the doomer attitude will give way. Like everybody's mad about the threes, but like if you actually watch fucking ball,
it's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
It's like it's cool. It's cool. And 2, there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
Like there are plenty of teams whose games don't just rely on that, and like where you see really creative and interesting things happen. And I think you have to be kind of like it's a different era than it was before, but I don't know. I feel like it's just like it's just inscrutable to me. The idea that like, well, you know how I know the ball isn't good right now because the number go down on the linear TV and cable thing, which by the way, with the sport that has the worst fucking blackout like rules of all of them. Like has the most like onerous, like it's such a pain in the ass to try and watch your local market team, even if you pay for cable in some places. Like it is such a nightmare.
Yeah. We talked a lot about the blackout rules and MLB TV for the first few years of this pod, and it just became like it's never going to change, and so why even continue to yell about the exact same shit? But I think, Alex, maybe we even haven't really talked very often about how it's like kind of worse in basketball. It's just as bad when you pay for, the league pass. Like you have all the same issues or you run into local blackouts and stuff. But the NBA national games, because the national deals that they sign are the thing that truly drive the revenue and why they can sign for exorbitant amounts of money, even though the ratings aren't that good compared to a sport like football. Those are spread out among like 5 or 6 different channels at this point. So if your team is not on your local cable network, which they often are not, especially if you live in a big market like New York or LA or the Bay Area for the Warriors, since Steph has risen to power, you have to have like 14 different subscriptions to be able to watch every game of your team. It's crazy what they've done there.
And it's like, oh yeah, like no wonder it's incredibly difficult because there's that. And then of course, like what's nuts is I have a friend who was just visiting and he had never been to the Garden. And like one of the reasons I love the Knicks as well is not just that amazing team to root for these days, but also like the Garden is like a really special like sports attending experience. Like I didn't say this about my Mets fan. I'm like, I saw 2 games of the NLCS. I saw one at City and I saw one at Dodger Stadium, both of which the only 2 games the Mets won.
Damn, but we should have got you there to the other ones. You were the good luck
right.
charm.
That's listen, I've only said that about like 5 million times since. No, but the like Dodger Stadium is the parking lot accepted is a special like ball like sports venue experience.
It's holy.
Like
it's baseball nirvana.
Precisely. Like MSG is similar, and I would go so far as to say it's like maybe the best sports venue of its kind like that in America, which puts it in the running for the world for sure. But he goes to MSG and tickets there notoriously not cheap. And he was telling me that it was like a quarter of what it costs to go see, what the equivalent seats would have been in San Francisco. So like it's how true, like it's all anecdotal, etc. But and I'm sure that game variety matters because he was seeing the Knicks beat up on the Raptors. But it is like kind of interesting to me how like it's expensive. Like it should be not it should be, that's stupid, but like it makes sense. There's a logic to it. It's like, why is it expensive to see the New York Knicks in New York City? In Manhattan. 8 blocks south of Times Square. Like why is it expensive as shit to see like a really good like to see the Warriors in the same way or whatever? I don't know. Maybe that's a dumb fucking question, but it just strikes me as like, oh yeah, like people have like in many places, like it's not an easy experience to be a casual fan in basketball for the TV watching reasons. And because like it constantly feels, I'm sure, I haven't, without having gone through it, like I'm sure MLB jerseys now are fanatic disasters too, right?
Yeah, dude, it's a total clusterfuck.
It's insane.
Yeah. So it's just like, okay, yeah, like being a fan is a punishing, shitty experience for any sport now. While also wrestling with the fact that like the fundamental aspect of being a fan is being a pig at the trough.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that actually, because obviously this is one of, if not the single through line of this whole podcast over the course of 7 years, is like the experience of being a fan under the particular version of late capitalism that has, succeeded in the sports world, which is to say like they know they have us. They know they have like the stickiest possible product, which is live sports, and they know that we will pay exorbitantly for it. So I'm wondering, like, for you as a fan, as someone who clearly thinks critically about the ways that capitalism exists in the world, as evidenced by your body of work, like, how much are you able to release yourself from that? How much do you think about that? How much does that bother you? Like, what do you think we should do? Can you solve this for us here in the course of the next 20 minutes?
Just a few softballs.
Yeah. Well, I think the way that I like personally manage it is that I'm able to Like it's there's no there are a lot of like prescriptive ways in which like fandom, is like, like we could say is like that you are meant to be a fan today, like, and what does that entail? It's betting, it's being in fantasy leagues with your friends. It is watching Red Zone or watching MLB TV or League Pass. Like that's like the hyper intense sicko, not just of your team, but perhaps of the sport to a broader degree way. But like it's like, consume, and that's fine. And buy, whatever. Get the race swimmer Wingstop no flex zone commercial so stuck in your head that you like begin to take it as like a cue to do like a Matthew Livelsberger style explosion event outside a casino. Like that's like, I get it. It's like, it does feel a little bit like an MK Ultra trigger, like setup. But I think that within all that, it is like all that stuff that's like, prescriptive or that it's set up or that it's incentivizing people to do. Like, it's just that. It's just incentives.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot easier, if you're able to like thread the needles or thread, like if you're able to watch games and of the team that you want to watch them for, and you're also able to, if that team sucks ass, have access to where like the rest of the action is and the juice is in the league, then that's kind of like all you really need. Because the like meta narrative stuff about like, is the quality of the game good? Like, because I feel like that's like a lot of what the misery of like this, like quote unquote, like capitalism stuff. It's like, yeah, like everybody knows that we're getting jobbed and like money's getting taken out of our wallets in all these different ways. Fine. But to me, it's like the thing that like that you don't totally get a choice in. But like the thing you do have a choice in is that you don't have to like engage in like the most, in an earlier era, right? It was probably when like everybody's sports takes were like derived from talk radio and like a lot of submental, like, mouth breathing, like level of opinions. And now like the contemporary version of it is like something a little bit more internet flavored, perhaps not quite as knuckle dragging on its face, but like you don't have to like engage on that level of the sport, whether it's like ratings discourse shit or it's, like having to like indulge in like the marketing jerk offs that, they now call like, like narrative craft in like league stuff or whatever. Like it's like I think being like the happy cynic, is sort of like the only perspective that like you can really have. Because it'll also inoculate one to some measure of disappointment, which is, not just from the on-field experience, the on-field product, the actual fucking performance of your team, but like you don't have to, like, you just don't have to indulge to like the purity of the thing that people give to it. And so when you don't have to like pretend that it has that, like, well, this is like the one sacred space in society of whatever like you just, I don't know. It feels like you can just appreciate it for what it is, which is like, I enjoy the fucking thing on the screen in front of me. Man hit ball, man shoot ball, man tackle, man go to hospital because of tackle, man unable to sit up straight for the rest of life, off screen.
No, I mean we've talked a lot this offseason about kind of that myth of baseball, right? That has been constructed over decades and centuries, right? This idea of the uniquely American pastime, right? And I mean, you on Blowback, I mean, you offer this sort of historical, critical look at U.S. foreign policy and how interventions abroad basically shape global politics. I mean, and a lot of baseball's expansion over the past few decades mirrors, I think, a lot of kind of broader American tendencies, right, of surrounding empire. I mean, as you have done this work, are there threads that you see popping up that, I don't know, mirror broader forces in baseball, or the reverse, in sport that are maybe connecting to broader like geopolitical forces that go along with like American policy abroad?
I'll plug my friend who is not. He's in. I have a friend who's doing a doctorate that kind of touches on this vis-a-vis soccer. My friend Brendan O'Connor. And I'll say that like it seems that there is like a world out there of people who are engaging with like the very concrete. Like a very concrete set of answers to the question that you pose, which is about how, like, as like neoliberalism, right? By another name, one could describe like the era of it as the era of globalization, the era of like, obviously the world has always been like very interconnected, but this is like an era of particularly intense development of ties between different countries, political and economic. Technological developments make this possible. Technological developments that restructure labor relations, that restructure corporate and global IP. I think I remember I was watching an interview recently with the British sociologist Perry Anderson, sociologist historian, who sort of is like talking about, and this is like an interview he gave us in like the early 2000s, and he's talking about how like like the global culture of the last 20 years as being American.
Mhm.
And that when you're not really able to disentangle the two. And a lot of that when I think of like the years of my childhood, and sort of the kind of 15 20 years into, so the early 1990s and late 1990s and the kind of 20 years into the period of more rapid or like the onset of globalization. I'm thinking of fucking America's team, Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Yankees eternity, and all these kinds of things, and so there is like a way in which when we think of like the sports today and their major signifiers and their power in the world and the kind of breadth that they have, just how far-reaching American professional competition is. It is to me like sort of very bound up in like a history of like American supremacy or some such. The thing with baseball specifically that's kind of interesting is that because it's the oldest major American sport, or at least the oldest, the oldest one that was, like a public narcotic, in a sense, it was a major thing that followed us abroad and so on. I mean, baseball is still, it's part of the way of the life of the place that we have the most, like imperial influence essentially in Latin America. And I think that
and Japan also.
And I was about to say, and
especially
in Japan and Korea.
Ohtani now, like that is such more of a present conversation, the international aspect of baseball in the last few years.
Well, and so this is where I think of it as there's, and then, I love seeing those stories about like European baseball freaks. I mean, who are always like a very small minority. But wait, that racist pitcher who, was it
Which
Trevor Bauer?
one?
You have to be more specific.
No, not John Racker. I mean, Trevor Bauer, right?
Right.
Yeah. And he did I saw some really funny videos. He did come hit against Trevor Bauer, see if you can hit my stuff to like open call, and it was like so obviously a bunch of like European teenagers go who are like baseball freaks, and some kid hit a fucking dinger on.
Yeah, I saw that.
But yeah, so it's I always feel that like the thing that's kind of interesting in like international baseball is that like it has that experience or whatever, but I don't know if anybody's ever like of like this kind of global thing accompanying America, but the image to me that's more or less seared into my mind, and it's a Hollywood image. It's not a real, referring to a real thing, is fucking Benicio del Toro in Traffic, where like ultimately, like what is it, what this Mexican police officer wants, lights so that they can play baseball at night in the local stadium. And it's because, baseball is like soccer, like others, it's a sport with a incredible reach that is also like not particularly restricted or bound by class.
Yeah.
Like class shapes it. I'm not saying that it's like so I'm not one of those people I'm trying to say sport is apart from class. No. Right. It's bullshit. It's just that it has clearly, as also evidenced by the fucking lives of the players in the league. How many people like essentially become like they've become generational wealth generators coming out of like the Dominican Republic or Venezuela. No, there is to me like a very interesting and attractive story in that about baseball. But I'll confess also that like I know extremely little about it. I'm aware of it as like a heritage and it's interesting.
Yeah.
And when I plan to go places now, I tend to try and look, both for, in the same way that I think I used to more instinctually look for it for soccer, just because, whether you're in Istanbul or you're in, like some small city in France, like there's probably going to be a local soccer team and that's something to check out. Mm-hmm. And now thinking like, oh yeah, like I should be doing that for baseball in the places where that also applies.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously I think there's definitely a way to look at like the global expansion of baseball and more deeply understand like American soft diplomacy and the policies of how we launder our pop cultural products throughout the world, and how that normalizes like our political behavior is definitely a way to look at it. But I think there's also a way to look at it in the reverse way, which is like honestly something I'm interested in hearing what you think about, Noah, in that baseball and sports in America do a lot to normalize like American imperial behavior. You know, like we have Lockheed Martin ads in center field for the Texas Rangers. Like we have Army recruiting commercials between innings all of the time. And
to me, the thing I resist is that like I just don't know how particular to like I think that that's a factor of like all major athletic competition, you know,
Right.
professional athletic competition in America. But what's that is itself reflective of like that's just American civic life.
Yeah.
Like that is like if we have an empty signifier, if we have a public spectacle, if we have like a shared experience, and it is a valueless container essentially into which we can inject a particular kind of ethic or ideal or, you know, statement about our culture and ourselves. Like, what does America choose to put in it? You know, vroom vroom, F-16, Blue Angels, fireworks,
Right.
fuck, you know, like hump the troops, like Veterans Day, Veterans inning, Veterans the gilded chair next to the dugout.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's what it's a kind of a casualty of.
Sports definitely feel more ripe for that than a lot of like the arts or like cinema or anything, or, you know, anything like that, because I think that there is like a broadly left or center left coalition that makes those things versus whereas baseball is like,
I mean, like
lower C
I
and
agree.
upper
I agree to a
C
point. I agree to a
conservatism.
point.
Yeah.
Like but like Michael Bay is Hollywood too. You know, like it's like
Damn right, brother.
I think it's like I think it has to be viewed as kind of like an integrated thing.
Yeah.
You know, part of why sports can be mass culture is because they don't have any particular like valence. They are, you know, like all kinds of people can enjoy it. I think box office people talk about like a blockbuster's got to hit 4 quadrants. It's got to hit the ladies. It's got to hit the fellers. And Bart and Lisa, I don't know, but the like, it's, you know, like that, like there's that conception of it. And it's like, yeah, that is on a very vanilla level, like how sports can do that. Like Hollywood, other like, so it's like those are also like wonderful at achieving in an even greater detail, like giving people narratives to play, you know, to to make pretty dastardly meaning of the world around them or whatever. In sports, it's, you know, I think its most toxic influence is just that it can, you know, I mean, and this is like true, like who the fuck am I to say this stuff? But it does just strike me as like it's nothing endemic to sports as much as it is that like, yeah, like athletic competition, valorizing people's physical achievements can perhaps lend themselves to some fairly fashy sounding things in our day and age, or, you know, are like, you know, I mean, like the people practicing them, you know, like they're just people like anybody else. And I think, as you guys know from like being baseball fans, people who cultivate an obsession with having like perfect, physical perfection in pursuit of like athletic perfection, like they're often fucking strangers. They're strangos, like of the highest order. And like just because I want a guy like throwing fucking heat for my team does not mean that I really want to know what he thinks about fluoridated water.
Yeah. I mean, in the information age, unfortunately, you do have to see Blake Trinan's Instagram story where he is posting the most up-to-date QAnon shit imaginable.
I am now making a game of it, though, because like baseball is great for this. You can watch like and be like, okay, this relief pitcher definitely believes some weird shit. Let's fire up Wikipedia, and lo and behold, yes, there's a controversy section.
Yeah.
It's fun. Hey, we opened this podcast by talking about Bryce Harper's recent admission to enjoying raw milk. Right, he and his whole family. His I think he has.
I sent that to like my
kids,
group chat, and they were like, "Oh, he's always had the sunken eyes thing."
Yeah, he has, but it looks really bad in whatever lighting he's choosing for his TikTok account, which doesn't even matter anymore because TikTok is dunzo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. I never used it, so I can't say RIP, but I hate to see Chinese industry take any L.
Before you go, and Bobby, you may have other questions you want to ask, but we asked this to folks who come on sometimes just as a fun way to see how their brain works. I mean, so if you're a commissioner of baseball for let's say it's your first 100 days. You're laying out your first 100 days plan. You don't have necessarily the external influences of the owners. You have absolute power. What is your 100-day plan? What are you accomplishing first about
locking
the sport?
David Rubenstein in a room and asking him what happened on 9/11?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. This
Sorry,
has been
like,
covered
that's-
in great detail on Tipping
Yeah.
Pitches, because when David Rubenstein bought the Baltimore Orioles, this was also a crazy episode where I think Alex, we ran through the entire Forbes 100 list to try to find a new billionaire to buy the A's. And gotta tell you, not a lot of great options on that list.
No.
No, not really.
But Alex revealed to me in real time where David Rubenstein made his money and the complicated political history of that.
Yeah, no, I would like straight up, like I would do that. And then I would probably I would make like David Wright hang out with me.
Nice.
I think I would do that for a little bit.
That's
And
pretty
then
good.
I don't know, man. I'd be so bad. Like that would truly be like a like the dog catching like the cat, like the car, like
Right.
like the league would be I'm also just enjoying now the thought of like the series of events that led to like Noah Kulwin assuming the commissionership. Like what twist of fate had to happen?
You remember that
I know
cable
you-
TV show Designated Survivor where Kiefer Sutherland
Yes,
plays
right.
the guy who has to not go and then it gets that's like the situation that makes you commissioner, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, they have this clause in the contract that if they all die, a random podcaster takes. Yeah. No. I think I would do all that, and then I don't know. I'd probably, and then I would move the A's back. I would fucking like John, like Mr. Fisher would pay.
Yeah.
He would pay for. He knows what he did.
I appreciate that you're using the commissioner role as sort of like a McCarthyism kind of situation, but
I don't know what the commissioner does all day. That's why I said I'd be terrible. at it. I
certainly
don't know.
not put Major League Baseball owners on trial, but we could reshape the position. I like
mean,
it.
like that would be fun, but I'm not
I
even
agree.
saying on trial. Trial, that's generous. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I want to do like the fucking nuns and the Blues Brothers, like rapping over the fingers,
Yeah.
like down the stairs. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I would like to do. Like, that's like the level on which I'm working. And again, like, making like Fisher like build the new stadium in Oakland himself.
Mhm.
Like he has to
Yeah.
has to build it. Like his task for eternity is
Forced
to have to, like,
labor for John Fisher. Let's do it.
to brick by brick rebuild after he has to single-handedly demolish the Coliseum.
Right.
He has to build it again
Right.
as a dual-use stadium. For what this, and the second use is gladiator combat.
There you go. Hey, you have my vote. Noah. I don't know if you're pandering to my little A's fan heart or not. But that's a win. I'm looking forward to it.
Besides Rubenstein and John Fisher, like what's your relationship to the ownership class in Major League Baseball? The unique flavor of like half guys who don't
Are
actually
you
have
asking
that
this? Are you asking me this as like Noah Kulwin or as a Mets fan? Because I have two very divergent answers.
I mean, it's the same for me. Like it's the exact
Yeah.
same for me. Where I'm just like, financial crimes are fine when it's the guy who gets me Juan Soto.
Well, no, I mean, I will say this: like Steve Cohen's financial crime, like the insider trading stuff, like I kind of care less about because that's just capitalism. But
Yes,
I do not like his plans for development in New York City. I do not like the idea of the Mets' success basically being a stalking horse for a casino, because I think that the last thing that New York City needs is like to become like have like gambling tourism added to the local industry. That can just happen elsewhere.
Mhm.
They have a whole city in the fucking desert for that.
Yeah.
We don't need a casino there. We don't need a casino in Hudson Yards. We don't need a casino anywhere else in the city. So that said, it's like, would he be doing all this if that were not in the picture? Probably not. But because he is doing it and he is like a giant fucking dork Mets fan, and whoever gives him advice on these things is not stupid, he does like the things that you want. Like, it's crazy. Like it's every other sport. Like there's just, for some reason, no billionaire owner will just like get it together and like do the thing, like suck up to Juan Soto, like and then like leak all of the drizzling little details to the local media
Right.
for your fans to eat the fuck up. Like it's all just like, he makes it all seem so easy,
Yep.
And granted, baseball lets you do that because there's no cap, but in other sports, it's not quite that simple. But that's part of the fun of baseball, I guess, is that sometimes you get a 1 in 32 chance of being the new Yankees. I don't know. Those aren't really the odds, but I'm just, I think the plutocrat owners are horrible. And in a just world, we would literally just set up public trusts that have to be run by like publicly appointed board members to administer like public sports. And I don't know, trust me, I've worked this out of my mind palace like every other fucking person who just who's waited 15 hours to get out of Dodger Stadium in a parked car.
Yeah,
right?
Dude. We talk a lot about how when Ray Kroc, the McDonald's guy, died and his widow, Joan Kroc, tried to sell the team to San Diego, and then the other major league owners came in and they were like, here's what you're not going to do, that or anything approaching that will not happen here, and they blocked it. And that was like the one chance that we ever had to have a major pro franchise actually owned by a city versus like whatever the fuck is happening in Green Bay with the Packers, which is like a bunch of people own stock in them, but also like that doesn't really get you very much.
Yeah.
The Packers are kind of an exceptional thing, and it's like not really like a model that seems replicable in any way, but it does seem that part of what all of this stuff is, though, related to your questions about sports and sort of tagging along U.S. empire. Well, a lot of the U.S. empire, frankly, is not like fucking just military bases in Okinawa or special ops in the Congo. It's also like having piping hot baseball to broadcast everywhere and to have people develop like affiliations and connections with. And part of making, getting all of that value, requires, have it being like an incredibly well capitalized individual or group of individuals yourself. I think one reason that sports today feels very different is that sports used to be a money loser for lots and lots of people. And now it is almost impossible to lose money in being a sports owner because of the structure of appreciation.
Yeah.
But
Do you want to weigh in right now on which of those appreciated $1 billion assets are more working class, the Mets or the Yankees?
I think I want actually, if I'm commissioner, the guys who wrote that article, the guy who wrote that article for New York Magazine, he's banned from every fucking game for life.
Just like the guys who attacked Mookie Betts during the World Series.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Treatment as
yes, exactly. Do you remember? I remember how those guys before because the reporters found them before the MLB did.
Yeah.
And so they were like, yeah, we're coming back tomorrow night. And so everybody just assumed wait, the sport's letting them come back, and they hadn't realized just how, oh no, these guys are these guys are they're not going to be allowed to be Costco members.
The guy who found them at the bar across the street writes for ESPN. And wrote that article. He called them beautiful or something like that.
Oh, it was awesome. He was sucking them off. It was hysterical.
Worldwide leader journalism right there. That's how we get it done. Noah, thank you so much. Do you want to let people know where they can find the different array of offerings of Blowback?
Yes. So our new season about Cambodia and Vietnam, Kissinger, Nixon, Pol Pot, and Reagan. You can get it all of your podcast feeds. It's coming out now. Every week, every Friday morning. And it is all 10 episodes will be available for free. But if you want to get the full season, bonus interviews with Seymour Hersh and other journalists who reported directly from Cambodia and Vietnam, you got to cough up for that. And you can do that at blowback.show for $25 for a year. That also gives you the ad-free back catalog to our show. And that includes our seasons on the Iraq War, Cuba, Korean War, Afghanistan wars, and also coming up in the next couple of weeks, we should have an announcement about where our next season 6, will be taking place and when it will be coming out later this year. But we are really excited about the season that we're working on right now. It's going to be fucking great.
He is Noah Kulwin. You can find Blowback, all that good stuff on all of your podcast apps or blowback.show. Noah, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
No, thank you guys for having me. I had a blast.
All right. Thank you to Noah Kulwin from a little podcast called Blowback. The new season is phenomenal. All the seasons are phenomenal. I mean, sure, you don't need us here on Tipping Pitches to tell you to listen to Blowback, but if you don't listen to Blowback, I would check it out. probably in your interest subset,
Mm-hmm.
I would say. We're going to do a little therapy now. A little fan therapy.
Yeah.
You and I are not doing therapy here. Unless you want, I mean, is there anything on your mind?
Well, I didn't think our session was scheduled until Tuesday. But if there's anything you wanted to talk before our session, we can do that.
What made you choose the day Tuesday?
It was one of
Because
the
that's
first...
my day. That's when I do it.
You didn't know that your therapist just lets me know everything that you guys talk about afterwards?
You?
Exactly. On all the notes.
You and I had a therapy of our own at dinner on last Wednesday.
We really
before
did.
We saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Honestly, a pretty psychological film.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What a banger that is.
Yeah. Hey, also, you want to talk intrusions of the military-industrial complex on pieces of pop culture in America?
Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. Spielberg has an interesting relationship to the military-industrial complex.
I mean, don't we all?
I would say his is not super clear. I would say he's not sort of sifted through some of the bullshit with some of the movies he's made.
Yeah.
That's my take. But I don't need to defend it here. I'm here to do therapy for our friends who wrote into the podcast. I think we should start with a voicemail that we got a while ago now at this point, like a month and a half ago when we put out calls for this, about the Tampa Bay Rays.
Ahoy, it's Will from the Slack, they, them, trapped in Florida, calling in for some fan therapy as both a Rays fan and a baseball baby, because while I know other teams and fans have had it worse and for longer, I'm new to this. I only started watching baseball in 2017 and really learned to love watching it with Blake Snell in 2018, much to everyone's chagrin. I've met my few new buddies in recent years, mostly thanks to the TP Slack. My wife and I started our honeymoon at the Trop's now final Pride night, and I don't know what I'm holding on to. Another trophy run is not around the corner. There are no franchise players to rally around long term because we're always saying goodbye to them. I can't even look forward to my beloved Goblin bunker of a stadium because they're not fixing it, because I watched the president of my own team ask them not to, opting to play at minor league parks indefinitely, and I'm just having a hard time coming to terms with the fact that I'm not growing old with anything from the Rays, just their spreadsheet. They keep kick flipping like a circus trick. And thanks. Love the show.
There was a sorrow in that voice I'm quite familiar with.
That was a pretty great voicemail, Will.
That was a great voicemail.
Thank you for all your contributions to the podcast and the Tipping Pitches Slack over the many years. The Rays are a tricky one. I mean, you have more personal experience with the Rays style of running a team than I do, given that it's not the same flavor, not the same flavor as the A's, but the same cuisine, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say it's fusion. You know, they were built off of what the A's brought to the table.
Right. So another W for Billy Bean.
Pretty much.
His web knows no bounds. Yeah, I mean, okay, Will, everything you said is true. Speaking as a therapist, is that stuff in your control or is that stuff out of your control? Let's start there. Life, right, is a series of decisions that we make, and we cannot blame ourselves for the things that are out of our control, right? You can't blame yourself for the fact that the Rays are just going to trade every good player, and that the one player that they decided to commit to for his career did horrible, terrible things, that the baseball consequences of which are irrelevant in comparison to the real world consequences. But still, as a fan, these things weigh on you. But that being said, I think that there is still plenty about the Rays organization year to year that as a fan is worthwhile. Like, number one, player development, getting the most out of players is, I think, a cool and underrated part of like the advancement of sabermetrics in baseball, where like you can have a player who could come to your team who maybe didn't have his greatest season for the last couple of years with a different team, and the Rays saw something in him and decided to turn him into a great usually pitcher, honestly, if we're being totally honest about how the Rays operate. Like, I think of Michael Wacha as someone who the Rays revived his career, and then he's gone on to have a couple good seasons with other teams. And that's a cool proposition as a fan, knowing that like the front office and the player development pipeline is going to get a lot out of the guys that you bring in. And there's going to be a level of competence in terms of player development that most other franchises don't have. The experience is not going to be like the Yankees and the Mets, etc. But that being said, it is, I think, because of the way that they operate, it's always going to be like kind of weird. And if you can divorce the fact that they refuse to spend money because of Stu Sternberg, you cannot let that run your life. I think you can kind of lean into the weirdness a little bit of having a bunch of kind of, as they have laundered this idea throughout years and years of Moneyball, like Island of Misfit Toys kind of organization. The Rays are kind of in that vein. And I think sometimes some of that stuff is really cool, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Your point about sort of player evaluation and discovery is very salient because there are a number of teams out there who simply can't do that, right? Cannot revive
like
players.
Don't even try.
Or don't even try, right? They are fielding, depending on the perspective you take, maybe last year's best prospect in baseball in Junior Caminero. They just have a knack for finding dudes, whether they are young players that they drafted and developed, or whether they are sort of guys that they picked up for cheap from another team because they didn't know what to do with them. The other thing that I will say, right, and this is not necessarily about the on-field product, but and maybe this is me wish casting because I don't wish upon any other fan base what A's fans have had to go through, but I find it hard to believe that the league is interested in another situation that is reminiscent of the A's departure from Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because it was, frankly, I think a really bad look for them to have a team that is the laughingstock of the league, but also, again, this is a league that wants to expand eventually. And the more you are moving your teams around, the more you are eliminating those markets from play and potential payout down the road. So that's what I will like say on that. And again, I'm not saying that with any insider knowledge. I just kind of I don't want to give these guys credit, but like
you can admit that you have insider knowledge. You've been doing some sniffing around at the league office. You know their plans for Tampa.
Hey, me and Stu, we cross paths occasionally. We do.
Since you started at JP Morgan, you cross paths with him at different investor conferences and whatnot.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
If you had to let me ask you this. Now we're completely moving away from Will's question.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Alex. If you had to get hired by an investment bank before 2025 was over, like how would you do it? What would be your move? Like you have to cash a paycheck from an investment bank. That's the only parameters. This is like David Fincher's The Game. This is the game.
Well, but I don't have to be an investment banker.
I didn't say anything about that.
So I could just do. JP Morgan has to have social media, right? What are they firing off tweets about? Like,
I think you mean posts. I think you mean posts. You doing social media for JP Morgan is my new favorite. Just my new favorite thing.
Just idea of something that could happen.
It can't happen. I mean,
what do you mean?
What are you going to point to? Yeah, I've been running this baseball account for the last 8 years.
Look,
really,
okay.
I think the voice you're going for.
Look, all I'm saying is twitter.com/JP Morgan. All they do is tweet out quarterly reports. Where are the memes?
You're trying to sauce it up. They don't need memes, bro. They're literally JP Morgan. Like they're literally JP Morgan.
I'm just saying you could bring your ethos to a younger audience, and I could be your guy.
Okay, that would be your plan. My plan would be to try to get hired as like a janitor.
Okay,
I have a little bit of janitorial experience on my CV.
Right, that's true. You do.
I don't know if they probably contract that out though, so my pay stub would probably not say JP Morgan and Chase.
So it wouldn't count then.
Yeah.
So
now that I think about it, I think that they probably have like an in-house podcast, and I probably would have to produce it, which is tough.
That's a terrifying thought to think about.
Yo, did I ever tell you about the time? I think I talked about this on the pod once, where my friend who works at Deloitte sent me a job listing that was for a podcast producer for the in-house Deloitte pod.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I mean, there are podcasts everywhere for those with eyes to see.
For those with ears to hear was right there for you. It was right there.
They do companies will produce like podcasts when they're doing like takeover bids. Like I was reading about this a while back when, like when companies have like shareholder struggles where like they're trying to do a bear hug or one is trying to oust the other or whatever. I don't know. These are just phrases I learned on Succession. Right, but like they will produce like podcast series to convince the other investors of why you should back this side.
Making a whole podcast series just for the people who are on the board of a company to listen to is crazy. Yeah,
it's insane.
It's crazy.
And it's happening and it's in your future.
Let me a follow-up question. Which one of us do you think could get hired at JP Morgan first? Honestly, if I'm being totally real, I think it's easily you. Your social media is already private and you haven't really been posting for the last few years. Like they would find me so fast and they'd be like, no.
It'd be over.
Yeah,
it would be so over.
It'd be over. They're not hiring someone to listen all the way this late into this pod.
No.
They don't have
I've
insulated
myself.
Manpower. They don't. No one wants to work anymore.
No one wants to work. You could try and be hired as the guy who listens to applicants' podcasts before they get hired at JP Morgan.
That's going to be a real job.
It probably already is.
On principle, I would not work at JP Morgan. Let me speak clearly.
Okay.
But
appreciate
on
the clarification.
Mega principle, I would not work in HR at JP Morgan. Hiring, recruiting at JP Morgan. I mean, come on. It's not even, it's just for my mental health.
Is that exactly the place you want to be? Changed within the inside.
Do you ever think sometimes, and now, Will, I'm really sorry that this started this whole tangent. How do I phrase this? Like what your particular set of skills could be used for in the most evil version of your life? Like, what do you think they could, like if someone was frankly, just like a coach for capitalism, like how do you think they could put you in the game in a position to succeed? I think about that sometimes.
What's your answer? What would you do?
I need to hear you first.
Okay.
I don't want to influence you. The boring answer is like producing a pod for JP Morgan, right? Like I could do that easily.
Yeah. And we're ruling out the things that like apply to everyone, which is like go into the military.
I'm not ruling that out.
Okay.
I think you would be fucking dog shit in the military, though. I think you'd be
probably
a terrible soldier. So I think the game's parameters are ruling that out. No offense or anything, but you're like, I won't even do yoga.
I'm starting to wear sweatpants to the gym. Baby steps. Right.
You're not doing anything at the gym. You're just wearing sweatpants and going.
Just go and take selfies. The skill, well, it's tough because I don't have very many skills.
Not true.
Okay.
It's not true.
You got me there. Fan cams for
like
Silicon Valley. Like, you're right. I was going to say, or like David Sachs,
Just different Davids. I think that, so you are really, you have a really curious mind. Mm-hmm. You're willing to try shit. You're willing to torrent things. You're willing to fuck around with developer tools. Mm-hmm. Like in another world, you could have easily been like a product manager at a tech company. Putting you on a path to becoming a CTO, basically. That's what I'm saying. Like you could be the CTO of Meta, is my belief.
Okay. I thought you were saying like from the skit, because like, yes, there is a world in which that is absolutely a reality. If this podcast doesn't start, maybe that's where I go. I think that's very transferable skills. I don't think today I could walk into Meta and say, hey, I'd like to do product management. And they'd be like, all right, we'll sit you down and give you an interview.
No, and I don't think you have to start from today. Like I'm saying, like you Men in Black erased your whole internet history.
The easy answer is someone who works for a renewable energy company is just work for a fossil fuel company instead. Like instead of doing marketing for my company, I do it for Exxon.
Okay, that's pretty good.
It's me and Rex Tillerson. We go way back. What can I say?
I think I would have been an awesome consultant. Like, I think I would have been great at McKinsey.
Mm-hmm.
I can bullshit my way through a
Oh my
fucking
God.
PowerPoint with the best of them, dog. I can write a fucking essay easily. I write a killer email.
Mhm.
Okay. I went to a desirable university. Notice how McKinsey was never knocking on the doors of the journalism department at NYU.
Weird.
Yeah, weird how they didn't come to us. And I think I could do a lot of evil in the world had I pursued that path.
Or at the very least, a lot of
I'm willing to
title
look up-
renaming.
True. I'm willing to look up a little bit of information about a lot of things. That seems like a skill that you need to have at McKinsey. You need to not know very much about one thing, but a little bit about a lot of stuff.
Right. And be able to make broad recommendations
based on that
based
small
off
amount
that
of knowledge.
little amount of information you have.
Yeah. So in the bizarro world, in the upside down, to borrow a phrase from that TV show everybody likes, you work for ExxonMobil in PR and social media.
Right.
Marketing.
Crisis PR.
Crisis PR at ExxonMobil. And I handle your account at McKinsey, and we do this pod offline at the bar every Friday. It's good stuff.
The Rays will be okay.
Yeah, the Rays are going to be fun. The Mariners, on the other hand, we got an email from Allie about the Mariners. Allie says, I've been a Mariners fan my entire life. Just my luck. That life began in 2002, the year after the Mariners won 116 games. That's tough, Alex. Being born into the longest playoff drought in North American sports history. That's tough. Allie says, I've watched a lot of bad baseball. Despite their lack of success on the field, I've always had fun watching the Mariners. There were bright spots, like Felix's perfect game, Cano signing, etc. I look forward to opening day every year, even when the whole city knew there was no way in hell the Mariners were finishing above 500. When the drought finally ended, I was at the game. That's exciting. My friend and I sobbed in each other's arms after Cal Raleigh clinched with a walk-off home run. Since then, the Mariners ownership has spat in the face of every single fan. The team hasn't made the postseason. They have one of the best rotations in baseball, but John Stanton and the rest of the ownership group refused to spend a single red cent to capitalize on the opportunity in front of them. That alone is infuriating, but coupled with the fact that they have the highest profits in MLB, it's enough to make me question whether I should continue to give this organization any more of my time and money. Seattle is one of the richest cities in the world. It's ridiculous that Mariners ownership is so cheap when surrounded by ungodly amounts of wealth. I've become a little jaded. I find myself looking towards opening day with dread, no longer feeling the excitement of years past. Sure, the Mariners don't usually supply much reason for optimism, but it's even worse when you know this team could be more. Please talk me off the ledge that John Stanton and Jerry DiPoto keep pushing me towards. P.S. I moved to New York in August, so if Bobby wants to give me his Mets elevator pitch, I'm all ears. I don't think I can ever give up on the Mariners, but I'll consider taking on an NL team whose ownership doesn't actively hate it. Well, Allie, listen. First of all, your PS right there is all the amount of optimism that I needed to hear. You're never going to fully give up on the Mariners. If we accept that as truth, if we accept these things about ourselves, to go into therapy speak mode for a second here. If you can accept about yourself that you're never going to give up on the Mariners, because I'm never going to give up on the Mets, and even though we literally assigned a new team for Alex last year, he can't give up on the Athletics fully. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of stuff to be positive about when it comes to the Seattle Mariners. Number one, they are one of the coolest franchises in sports history. They often coast off of that reputation. They often coast off of the history of players like Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson and Ichiro and Felix and Robinson Cano and all of these guys who have, I think, been uniquely cool within the baseball world. But number two, the Mariners pitching development is like as good of a player development group as there is in sports right now. They have churned out essentially 5 or 6 top 3 level starting pitchers, a thing that fewer and fewer and fewer franchises are able to do nowadays, which is why pitchers on the free agent market are still doing so well in comparison to every other position. No other franchise is really able to do this right now, except Cleveland kind of was there for a long time in the mid to late 2010s, but now Cleveland is like short on starting pitching, and their relief pitching development has been continued to be really incredible. But the Mariners clearly know how to draft and develop starting pitchers. What they can't do is they can't find hitters. and they don't want to pay for them. At some point, you'd have to think that it's so obvious what they should do when it comes to just paying for a known quantity as a power bat, that Jerry Dipoto will find a way for himself to do it. Now, he hasn't done it yet, but you would think at some point he will be able to do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you would think that he would luck into it.
Either that or he'll just get fired and they'll go the other direction.
Right.
So, like, if there's no Jerry Dipoto anymore, usually what happens after you fire someone is you hire someone who is a different kind of GM. You don't fire someone to make a lot of similar kinds of moves. So you would fire him and you would bring in someone who's more in the Dombrowski ilk, who's willing to take more risks, who's willing to try to do win now moves, who's willing to acquire established veterans in favor rather than sticking with, cost controlled, team controlled players. Like, if they fire Jerry Dipoto, I don't know, maybe the next guy would do something different.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a few things, and frankly, I think we have said this in other sessions, in other therapy sessions before, right? In that,
that's a HIPAA violation, but okay.
It's finding joy in the little moments, in Logan Gilbert painting the corners, in Julio Rodriguez turning singles into doubles, right? It's finding community and folks that you can actually share that misery with. There's a perverse joy in sort of, I guess, communal despair. And I would say look for that joy, whether that is actual joy about the things you're witnessing on the field, or if that's in commiserating over the state of your franchise. I think it's okay to set boundaries. Boundaries are important. It's okay to take a step back and reevaluate what that relationship should look like. If you need to go to fewer games, if you...
Well, in particular, Allie says that she moved to New York.
Right, yes. Yeah.
It's also, I'm going to be honest, important to set boundaries when you're not on the same coast as your team. Like, you can't let them run your life quite as much. When I moved to LA, it's a little bit easier when you go east to west, because then it's like, okay, the game's starting at 4. I can catch the back half of it after I leave work. Or in my case, if you work in sports, you could just turn it on while you're working at work. But when you go west to east, yeah, if you're jaded and frustrated, again, Alex is right, set a boundary.
The last thing I'll say is, how do I put this? Every owner has an expiration date. And that means that this is not forever, right? This is temporary, this pain that you're feeling. When that date finally comes, you will still be there, and you will have earned every bit of that joy that comes along with that. And I think you are a perfect example of that, right? Of the jubilation that came when the Wilpons finally skipped town. It does happen. It can happen. It will happen eventually. And I know those years in the middle are tough to stick out. And again, that's where I come back to finding the joy in community, knowing that this game actually belongs to you and the fans, and not to a handful of billionaires who want to control our everyday lives.
Yeah. Seattle, great ballpark, great city, great fan base, great uniforms, great star. Julio is, I mean, I know it was sort of a down year by his standards last year, but a star who's on an extension and will be with this team through thick and thin, you would imagine, for the next 10 years or so. So that's something that you can peg your fandom to. Even in the darkest of times of Mets fandom, I still had David Wright. And that got me through a lot of shit. And yeah, I mean, whether it's the Mets or not, like picking an NL team, picking another team to kind of follow and enjoy, I think expands the purview, allows you to always keep your team there, but not always be so up and down with their particular season. If you're following other teams, you're following the rest of the sport, et cetera, et cetera. All that being said, like, they're going to break through eventually, and each successive step along the way that made it seem less likely will make it seem so much more satisfying when it actually does happen. I say that as someone who literally loses sleep at night over thinking about what would happen if the Mets do not win the World Series before I die. Because the last one they won was 10 years before I was born. 10 years before I was born, Alex. 10 years before I was born.
Brutal.
And the last one for the A's was 13 years before you were... No, more. 80...
No,
81?
That was 89.
So
that
true.
was 7 years.
Yeah. And finally, when the Mariners do have their run, when they do go on to win the World Series, when they're on their magical run, defying expectations, defying all of the weighted history, everyone else seems to be like really pro Mariners. There's no other franchise, there's no other fan base that's like, fuck the Mariners, I hate the Mariners. Everyone's like, yeah, they're cool. I honestly give the credit to Ken Griffey Jr. for this, frankly.
And Macklemore.
And Macklemore. If the Mariners win the World Series, I mean, there might have to be a statement from the president. Macklemore, you can't come to the parade. Everyone's going to be really on your side, so it's going to be even more fun. It's going to be great when that happens. That's all I got. You can be jaded, but don't let them totally kill your spirit.
Exactly. Well put.
Thanks to everybody for listening to this week's episode of Tipping Pitches. If you like what you heard, please check out the Patreon. Patreon.com/tippingpitches. We do 2 bonus episodes a month, one every other week. Most recently, I don't really know what happened. We did a 3 up, 3 down segment where we talked about three things that bring us joy and 3 things that take that joy away in the baseball world, and it just went an unbelievable amount of places.
Always does. That's the Tipping Pitches promise.
Was it a good pod? I think so. Some exciting stuff coming up for the rest of January. Some more really wonderful guests. Thank you again to Noah Kulwin. State of labor in baseball we will be doing, but at the end of this month. We usually do it at the beginning of this month, but have no fear. Michael Bauman has already been contracted legally into doing it. Which means he responded to my text message, which is good. Because one year he might just not, and we'll have to do it without him. But this year he has committed to doing it. So I look forward to that. Other than that, any final words of wisdom?
Listen to Blowback.
It's
good shit.
We'll talk to you soon.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Rodriguez. Tipping Pitches.
Tipping Pitches.
This is the one that I love the most.
Tipping Pitches.
So we'll see you next week. See ya!
Did you see Complete Unknown yet?
No, I'm seeing it on Thursday.
Great.
What are your thoughts?
My thought is that since I saw it like over a month ago at this point, I literally have not been able to get Timothée Chalamet singing Complete Unknown out of my head since then. Like every time I see someone talking about it, it's all I can think.
So what you're saying is you want to do a live watch party of his SNL performance?
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, he's in the Zoom.